All right, in sickness entry today. Now, ordinarily, what I would do for these is I would have written a journal, like a little Dear Diary. Let me recount my experiences as I go through the broken healthcare system. Here's where mistakes are made. Here's what malpractice looks like. Here are the consequences. Here are my observations. I don't have one of those little journals today. Instead, in the place of that, what I have is a podcast clip. About a month ago, on December 10th, 2024, that's where 2024 lives, is back there. I went on Michael Bruno's podcast, and the whole thing was over 3 hours, but there was a little segment in there, about 15 minutes. I haven't gone in and excised it yet, so I don't know the exact length, but approximately 15 minutes where we talked about socialized medicine. And so that clip is what I'm going to share with you today in just a minute. I'll cut to that. But before we get there, I just need to preamble a little bit and say that at no point in that 3.25-hour conversation did I express some allegiance with a political party. At no point in that entire conversation did I give any indication that I value one party over another. Never did that because I'm not concealing the truth here. I'm not being secretive. I just don't have one. I don't have a political party, and I'm not interested in adopting one. So if oh, you don't have one, here's mine, take it. I don't want it. Keep it. That's fine. You keep it. I don't want it because I see subscription to parties, this sort of adherence to a political party as exactly as foolish as it is destructive, which is to say a lot of both. Now, this can be a little bit contentious. It can be a little bit sensitive of a topic to talk about politics. So let's talk about sports instead. By way of analogy, let's talk about sports. Because like politics, the whole world over, you can make this claim with soccer, but in the US, just like politics, innumerable adults, uncountable adults are incredibly passionate about some professional sport. And just like politics, I don't care about professional sports. So that positions me very well to be an objective observer. I can go to a stadium and be an ethnographer. I can just sit there and passively witness the behavior of my fellow hominids. And I think it's a valuable experience. Everyone should do it. It should be like a high school field trip or something. I did it with hockey. You can do it with any sport. Just pick one. Baseball, basketball, football, soccer probably works. But again, I did it with hockey. And go to a professional game, some stadium, some big event, go sit in the crowd and just watch the behavior of the fandom. Now, there's going to be close calls. In any sport, there's going to be close calls. And the referee, the umpire, whatever they're called, whatever the official is in that sport, they have to make a decision in those moments. And they do the best, to the best of their ability, they decide what to call there, and watch how the crowd responds. This to me is the most fascinating part of sport, is how the crowd responds. Now, approximately half of the spectators are going to be adamant in their support of what the ref did. It's practically heroic what the referee did. In the face of adversity, they stood up for the truth. They stuck to the facts. That's half the crowd. The other half, to put it lightly, disagrees. They are just belligerent in voicing their disagreement of that call. Seething, screaming, you hear their voice. You can see it on their face. Their face is flush red and veiny. And that anger is real. If they're wearing a Fitbit, you can see it on their heart rate. If there's like a cardiologist in the crowd, like, whoa, settle, we're gonna have an aneurysm. If the blood pressure is this high, put on the cuff and you're gonna see the problems. And so that anger is real, and it's worth noting. And so when I went to that a hockey game, I can't see the puck. If you're sitting in the crowds, the puck is just invisible. So all I could really see is violence on ice, but that same violence extended to the crowd. And maybe more so because from the people next to me, whenever I think it's called a referee in hockey, whenever the referee made a call that they disagreed with, right, literally death threats to that referee were being screamed, hoarse, screaming voices with death threats to the referee. And what's worth noticing about where that anger comes from, exactly 100% of their beliefs in the crowd, right? 100% of their decisions, their beliefs come from team affiliation. Which team are they rooting for? That explains everything. Okay, facts don't matter. You can show them the replay. Pull out the replay. Let's do the instant replay and let's see whatever. They don't care about that. It's team allegiance that explains everything. And they will defend their team no matter what. And to me, I'm going to make a value statement here. This doesn't have to be true to you. This next sentence, the previous sentence kind of has to be true because that's what you observe from an objective ethnography perspective. But this next claim is a value judgment. And to me, that's the creepiest thing I've ever seen. And I've watched a lot of nature shows. Okay, if David Attenborough has narrated something, I've seen it. Go into like the deep ocean, you see some creepy stuff. I think this is the creepiest thing I have ever seen a species do. And getting out of sports, when you get into politics, that same behavior persists, right? We don't start changing behaviors because now it's politics. Team allegiance in politics explains pretty much 100% of people's beliefs. They will defend their team no matter what. Reason and logic, evidence be damned. And that's just not me. That's not going to be me. If I take an issue, if there's an issue that I hold in some value, that I hold dear, that I think is important. Now, a lot of political issues, I'm sure you've noticed, are just like, I don't understand why anyone cares. Why are we affixing these political barnacles all over this pointless thing? And I think it's for the sake of argument. People love to be angry. They love to argue. They love that. I don't, but I'll take a political issue, an issue that's independent of politics. And when I hear all of these political statements about it, I don't care. Because I care less about politics and political party line, all this stuff, than I do football teams. And to put that into perspective, in my entire life, I've seen 2 football games. One of them was my friend Grant. It was his best man at my wedding, his kid. We went and watched his kid play in like a community game. It's just like a family. It was that sort of community support. The only other football game I've ever seen, I was a kid. This is like when I was that kid's age. And with my friend Sid and by extension the Van Dykes, we went to a Seattle Seahawks game. And I have 2 memories from that game. One of them is how much I did then, I still do, the Van Dykes. They're such wonderful people. I hold that affection in my heart still today, that memory. The other memory I have from the game is I ate a mozzarella stick, and like when it was like bad, football concession stand, like cheese sticks, and I vomited it, but it like becomes this like elongated snake, and like it pokes its head out a little bit as I vomit. It doesn't come clear out, so I re-swallow it, and I re-vomit and re-swallow. So I spent 15 minutes vomiting and swallowing, and that's my only other memory of football. I've never seen a football game on TV, ever. I've been invited to a couple of football, Super Bowl parties, but never the same party twice, because what I do if I go to a Super Bowl party, I can't be bothered to watch the game. I don't understand why anyone does. It's a bunch of strangers. It's a bunch of adults with gambling debt wearing tights. I don't care. I would rather have a conversation with somebody, but drumming up a conversation with somebody who's fixated on the game, it doesn't work. And so I don't watch the game. What I do though is when the commercial break happens, everyone leaves to pee out their beer, and to get another slice of pizza or something. And that's when they talk and everyone's distracted. As much commotion as people make about Super Bowl commercials, it's not really true. In my experience, nobody watches the commercials. That's when they go to the bathroom. And so I go up to the TV and I change the channel. And I put it on one of those stations, like the Home Shopping Network, one of those stations that's just nothing but advertisements, there's permanent ads. And then people are a little bit drunk at this point. They'll come back and I'm still in commercials, and they're talking about the big play or whatever, who's going to win. And 20 minutes go by, and even drunk people start to notice that the commercials have been on for 20 minutes, and they're not even good. And so they start wondering what's going on. Eventually they change the channel and realize that for the last 18 minutes or something, the game has been playing and they've been missing it. And then it comes out that I did it. I'm kicked out of the party. I've never been invited twice to Super Bowl. But that's how much personal value I assign to sport. That's the exact same amount of value I assign to politics. And so if there's an issue that's important, I don't care about political parties. I don't care about party line. I don't care about allegiance and teams and whatever. I don't care about any of that. I care about the issue, and health care, health, by extension, survival, is the issue I think is most important, and I don't even understand why a single political barnacle has affixed itself to something that important. But that's what the podcast is about, and the clip, particularly this clip. So I'm going to share it with you now.
It blows my mind how so much of what I'm now learning in like the business program and the MBA program, I'm like, oh, that's a negative feedback loop that they're just building. Like it's like that's science, right? And it helps me learn stuff.
Yeah, if we want business, if we want technology, if we want anything to work, model it after evolution. Evolution has been working since the dawn of species, and it's succeeded.
Right.
As evidenced by what's walking around and flying around and swimming around today, there were some victories there, and what's rooted and growing. And so if we can model our inventions, I mean, whether it's sanitary service, the garbage trucks and everything and how those operate, I think we could probably do those better if we try to model it after how a body does it. I mean, just, pick the immune system, pick circulation, pick whatever it is. And we can come up with inventions for transportation, inventions for, economic equality. So if you just do it like the body does.
Right. It's great. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Even electricity, it's basically a nervous system. You start seeing these things. Okay.
But I do think allocation of resources, what biology does with that, trees share and our organs share and what is a flaw in the system of sharing. Well, cancer would be a good flaw in the system, and that usually does a body in. Untreated, right? It does a body in. And so when we see the same thing in a country, okay, pretty quickly, if it's in the US, we become like a third world country. The systems in place are not devised like a human body. It's basically devised like cancer. This unbalanced sharing of resources where one entity is a hoarder to the deficit of other entities. And that's not sustainable. And so I think we need to continue to model what we're doing with policy, what we're legislating after evolution and biological systems if we wanted to continue to work.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Folks forget that, if you stick with like biological process, I go back to like healthcare, right? It's like, okay, well, if you look at healthcare, if folks can't afford it and then they can't be healthy and have a life where they can contribute, and it's not all about contribution, but it's the point of like, if you can't contribute, by definition, you're reducing that person to basically a salvaged good that, right? And that, you see what I'm getting at? You kind of are like just saying, well, we're not going to pay for that, or we are going to pay for that, and then folks can't contribute because they're not healthy and well, and then if they're not contributing, that contributes to some of the waste in society.
But also I think health and personal contribution or sense of importance or purpose or something like that, I think that is the issue that we all have. Like if you ask, let's say 100 people, just take 100 people in the US and say, what do you think the most important qualities of life are that everybody should have access to? And they're going to say like health and safety. Education, that's not even number 3. Because we have access to books and we can read and we can teach our own kids and we can do whatever. Education is up there. I think it's important. But I would say health and safety. Let's all not die. Let's not be in pain. Let's not suffer. Let's not die right away. And so if we can get those things, if we can get like health taken care of, then people can lead more meaningful lives and contribute. But then you ask people about government policy and they are so, their objections to like socialized medicine are outrageous. And like, okay, we all accept socialized tons of things. I mean, so like we accept, to put it in perspective, everybody seems to accept socialized sports. I mean, think about it. Like, it's almost 75% of the stadiums, these like mega domes and stuff. It's something like 70 over the last 50 years. It's something like 73% of every dollar to build these things are taxpayer dollars. We're building the arenas out of tax burden on these things. And so we're paying for sports in this way. And think about like public schools. And the athletes who are going there, farm systems for basketball, for football. I mean, these are farm leagues. And we're paying the coaches, and very few, I mean, you can count on a couple of hands, the amount of schools that are actually generating profit from their D1 programs compared to losing. Now, where in my school, it's an 8-figure annual number of money lost on sports that has to be compensated with tuition and housing and food and whatever. Like the room and board is some of the income, tuition is the bulk of the income. But after you factor in every source of income from athletics, it's still an 8-figure annual loss. And when you get into public school systems, it's not that different. Now there's LSU, there's Ohio State, there's programs that are generating a bunch of income, but almost all programs are not those. And these are taxpayer dollars, right, that are paying for basically adults to play with balls. And then you hear, for the farm league system and hiring the coaches and hiring on the athletes themselves are paying, and I'm hearing these arguments about, like, we need to pay the athletes as employees. The athletes in these programs, the football players and basketball players and soccer and whatever, we need to pay them as employees. Like, okay, now this is socializing sports even further, because what happens if they get injured? Lots of them do. Okay, so they're going to get injured, and then at that point, are we paying for that? Right? I mean, like, how far does the tax dollar go? And every one of those dollars could go into health. Could go into public health and safety and longevity and medical care and health information and all. But people are like, no. We need to socialize sports, football and basketball and stuff. That should be tax funded. But health and survival, that's the political issue. And so I think we get into some of these where people lose the number of people who file for bankruptcy owing to medical debt. I mean, I'm nearly one of them. I have 6 figures in medical bills out of pocket. 6 figures in out-of-pocket medical expenses. I mean, I live paycheck to paycheck trying to afford this. And I'm not unique here. There are priorities that Americans put first, adults playing with balls, ahead of, but if you ask them, what should we really prioritize here? Health and safety. That's what's going to come up, and we're not prioritizing those things with a dollar.
Yeah, I think that's, wow. I don't know what aspect of that I want to touch on first. So here in Philadelphia, like Lincoln Financial Field, for example, for the Eagles, that could be more largely funded by taxpayer dollars to pay for that. I never thought about that. And so now I'm sort of in the mindset that, well, if I pay for a ticket to go to the Eagles game, there shouldn't be any fees and extra stuff on there because I already paid to build it, contributed to help build it, right? So there shouldn't be any processing fees since we already paid on the front end. I think a lot of folks might be frustrated with just allocation of those resources and how, I think it's a lack of transparency on how resources are actually being used. But to your point about health, getting back on health, yeah, it's like the allocation and the priority of resources is, some folks won't go and pay to get a physical every year. How many people don't have a primary care doctor, but they won't think twice about buying whatever they want from Amazon for the holidays, right? Right. So they'll go into credit card debt to buy stuff on Amazon for the holidays, but meanwhile they haven't had lab work done in 3 years.
Yeah, and those bills will be catastrophic. But again, going back to your point of, if you want to go to an Eagles game, you've already paid for some of that, and then you're being double charged here. And I used to tell students how much they pay for my institution's athletics program. Like, if you're a tuition-paying student, here's how many thousands of dollars you're paying for athletics. And so, oh, you get to go to a game for free. That how many thousands of dollars did that one ticket cost you? I mean, you could go to like Yankees versus Cubs World Series, sit behind the catcher. You could like get a ticket in the dugout for how much you pay. And you've like never been to a game, or went to one game, and here's what you used to pay. And so then, again, when I hear these arguments about the athletes aren't getting their, what they deserve, and they need to be paid and stuff like that, and it's like, look at workman's comp law, and how much money would go into taxes at public institutions or whatever if we had to just, okay, the athlete was injured, we have to, tax burden goes into their workman's comp case and all that. Like, this is so, people just don't understand how the financial system works here, and how much debt we're going into over socialized sports. And then in medicine, if we were to socialize medicine, the number, I mean, granted, a lot of these, the tents that people are now living in, and the homelessness and the bankruptcies, you can actually trace a lot of this, there's papers on this, to gambling. And so that this increasing legalization of online gambling on sports, gambling on everything, gamble on who wins the presidency, gamble on Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul, gamble on everything. And this has really contributed to our homelessness. So that's one variable. But what are people filing bankruptcy over? There's I was so close to being one of them. Like, I'm a 44-year-old tenured professor, and like I rent, and I don't have a car, and my phone is like some old, like, it was my grandpa's phone. It's a iPod or iPhone 5, like a 5th generation. And this is so I don't file for bankruptcy. Again, $100K out of pocket, medical expenses, and then when you go through the medical system, it's broken. Because the incentives are all about money. I had a pulmonologist, Subramanian, and he was prescribing me weird stuff. And I looked up what's the drug company here, AstraZeneca, and why I don't meet the criteria to be prescribed this, and it's $5,000 a dose. Like, what is going on here? And there's a .gov website where you can look up how much pharmaceutical companies are paying individual physicians, how much money do they take. In the previous year, before he prescribed this to me, the current year hadn't been reported yet, he received $250,000 from pharmaceutical companies, and the biggest one was AstraZeneca for prescriptions. And like, this is a system that, like, no wonder. I mean, whether it's third or fourth leading cause of death in America, let's take the benefit of the doubt on the doctor's behalf and say it's the fourth leading cause of death in the United States is physician error, medical malpractice, whatever. Going to the doctor is your cause of death. We all used to think it was heart disease because that's how it was coded. It was coded as heart disease because there was no, like, I fucked up. That wasn't an option, right? It was like, at some point the heart stopped, so let's code it as that. And so everyone thought heart disease just killed everyone. Like, no, third, fourth, leading cause of death is the doctor themselves. And this, because the incentive structure is how much money can you make. It's ICD-10 codes. It's how much billing can we get in here. And at no point does diagnosis and accuracy and patient outcomes really enter the equation. If it did, our entire incentive structure would be different. But it's not that. And you look at like the World Health Organization, how we organize this stuff, and we're not good. The U.S. is not good. Like, greatest country in the world, people always say. And okay, we have a great economy. We have the biggest GDP in the world. Is our medicine comparable?
That's gross, though. That's gross. That's gross revenue dollars, basically.
Yeah.
Right? It's not accounting for the cost of, it's not accounting for the revenue, so it doesn't understand, like, it makes it look like the biggest GDP, but gross domestic product isn't account, you know what I mean? So it's not accounting for all the costs. But at the same token, I get what you're saying. I think that you're cooking right now, which is good. You're cooking up a lot of stuff. And I think, when you talk about medicine, the AstraZeneca, I want to talk about that for a second, not as a specific case, but, it drives me, I think right now in the current world and in the way now that we're on the other side of the election, the political climate and how things are presented is, for whatever reason, it seems that a lot of people don't have the same trust, I guess you will, of certain medical information or medical professionals because, to your point, you had a doctor who got $250,000 from AstraZeneca. And so the real question then, I guess I might think this as a patient, is the AstraZeneca drug really what you recommend, your true, genuine medical opinion for me? Or is it that you're incentivized because you want to get paid as much as you possibly can by pushing those drugs?
Yeah,
And
it's obviously the latter. I mean, like nobody would deny it's the latter. And there's a corruption there that biases treatment. And poor treatment means poor patient outcomes. And no wonder we're ranked so low.
so what do we got to do to fix that? What do you think we can do to fix that?
I think socialized medicine is the answer if we're going to be, what I suspect 30 years from now, if AI hasn't killed us, 30 years from now, we will look back on today and cringe at what we were doing with the medical system, of how human health was commoditized in a way that didn't heal people. Now, there's a too far here where people say like, oh, there's cures for cancer and they won't release it because cancer is profitable. So like, okay, there's cancer researchers. I mean, we know like Justin Brown, he would tell us, like people on the inside who were doing all this research, the reason they go into cancer research is they're losing loved ones to cancer. And they themselves have this, if their ancestor after ancestor perished to cancer and they're at risk, they're doing everything they can to thwart their own risk and they still succumb to cancer. This isn't an economy people would die for. There's conspiracy theories.
Yep.
It takes one person to spoil it. Like a surprise your birthday. Like everyone is in on it. Like the people who are coming, nobody's actually surprised. Like somebody has spoiled it. There's people like hiding behind the couch. It just takes one person to spoil it. And for something so big, it would just take one researcher to say, no, I was involved in the research. And so I don't buy into any of these conspiracy theories about medical care. It's just the incentive structure biases treatment for money. And the individual is always, it's like Skinner psychology. This isn't new, and there's nothing about this as novel. It's exactly what you would expect. If you were to run the model, what do you think would happen to a healthcare system if this is the incentive structure? Well, that's exactly what happened. And so it comes as no surprise. And I don't think it's the individual physician's fault for fleecing the patients to the best of their ability, because that's what they're rewarded for doing. I don't think
they're playing the game to a large extent.
Playing the game. I don't think physicians know.
All right, that was it. I don't think I said anything that was politically affiliated, that would support one political party over another, but I wouldn't even know because I don't pay attention to that stuff. If there's some political party line, I ignore those things as biased and agenda-driven, and I'm not interested. What I care about is the facts. I observe the phenomena, again, like an ethnographer. I'm going to go in and observe this stuff objectively, without bias, and then I'm going to assign bias at that point. My own values. We all have personal values. And my hope moving forward is that we can assign our values to facts. Right? Our values are not determined by politicians. Oh, my party says this, so I have to shout it too and raise my blood pressure and get my heart rate going and flush my face red and seethe about it because that's what my politician says to do. No, we need to branch out a little bit and have independent thought and be human beings and stop all this creepy nonsense and be able to discuss with each other our values in an unheated environment. And that's what I tried to do here. I'm sure I offended people, but I don't actually know why. But that was not my intention to offend. It was my intention to observe evidence and talk about my values. And what is there to value more than health and survival and flourishing and well-being? So, all right, that's it. I'll see you next time.